Guys, welcome back to Coliseum Forum. You may notice we have a new home here on Twitch, which I'm really excited about. And to kick us off, we're our first Coliseum Forum on our new platform. I'm joined by somebody that really probably doesn't need an introduction, but we're going to go through it pretty quickly. Paul Newman from Mad Men. You've got Red Skull from Endgame and Infinity War. He's played the Immortal. He's one of the longest survivors on The Walking Dead as Aaron. Russ Marquand, man, thanks for agreeing to do this.
Thank you for having me. Good to be here.
So before we jump into it, because I have a bunch of cool questions for you, you're coming to visit us. That's a thing.
Yeah.
January 15th, and yeah, it's this weekend. That's 3 days away from now. Yeah,
that's right.
3. You visit us at our Kissimmee location?
Kissimmee or Kissimmee?
I don't know. I'm actually originally from New York, and so I say Kissimmee, but I don't know if that. Somebody told me I called it a pecan pie, and they're like, "Son, that's what you keep under your bed."
Right.
And I was like, "Okay."
A pecan. That's very funny.
Yeah.
I've been to Orlando a million times visiting family, but I never knew if it was Kissimmee or Kissimmee. I'm assuming it's Kissimmee, but
I think it's Kissimmee unless you're from the Midwest, and then it's
okay.
Kissimmee.
Oh,
you really lean on that italicized I at the end there.
Got it. Yeah. So yeah, the Coliseum of Comics in Kissimmee and New Tampa as well. So
that's awesome. I'm actually I will get to meet you both those days, so I'm pretty excited about that. So here's the thing. How are you so successful right now? You are literally, if you turn on the TV, if you turn on the streaming apps, you're literally everywhere. Like you're on Walking Dead, you turn on the Netflix or AMC, oh, there's Russ Marquand. You turn on Disney Plus, and then here you are, not only reprising Red Skull again in What If after Endgame and Infinity War, you're also now stepping in for James Spader as Ultron, arguably the coolest iteration we've seen in the MCU so far, by the way. So what's going on? Why are you taking over?
For in the case of Red Skull and Ultron, I feel like I'm the guy that they call when they can't get the guy that they originally played. But no, honestly, I love playing both these guys because I grew up drawing and reading Marvel comics when I was a kid. I was a fan of DC and Marvel, but Marvel was more my jam. If I'm being honest, I mean, I like them both, but Marvel is really what I was really drawn to more than anything. And I've collected Marvel comic cards since I was like 9. All of the money I made lawn mowing literally all the money I made lawn mowing went to Mile High Comics in Littleton, Colorado, which is now blown up into this huge, massive enterprise. Like Mile High Comics is like this huge nationwide source for comics and comic book cards, of course. But I have Marvel series 1 through 3, Marvel masterpieces, a bunch of comic books, which I will cherish dearly, even though my mom continually wants to get rid of them because they're stored in my childhood bedroom in Colorado. But yeah, I love that stuff, and just getting a chance to play Red Skull, who I used to draw as a kid, and Ultron, who was one of my favorite villains. It's honestly it's a literal dream come true. It feels amazing.
So can we rewind back to I guess it would be 3 or 4 years production time at this point, but obviously Hugo Weaving was Red Skull, and which I don't know if you're aware of this, of the debates in comic book stores that happened around the country after you took over, because it's people don't read the credits a lot of times, and they're like, yeah, it's Hugo Weaving. You're like, no, it's not Hugo Weaving. It's that dude from The Walking Dead. And then everybody's running off the IMDb because I think if anybody's ever watched any of your interviews, they know you're an amazing impressionist, right? So how do they go, hey, would you like to come in and be Captain America's arch villain?
They reached out to my manager and asked if I did a Hugo Weaving impression at the end of season 8, I want to say. This was back in 2017. So I think it was season 8. And I asked my manager, I said, well, what iteration of Hugo Weaving? Because Hugo obviously is an Aussie actor, but he does British, he does American, he does German really well. And I was thinking, are we talking about Lord of the Rings? Are we talking about Priscilla, Queen of the Desert? Like, what are we talking about here? The Matrix? and they're like, no, we're thinking more of a German Hugo Weaving, but we can't say what it is. I'm like, are you talking about Red Skull? And they're like, well, we can't really say. And I was like, okay. I mean, because at that point it wasn't pitched to me as an Avengers movie. It was just untitled. What was it? untitled Marvel movie or something like that. There was no context whatsoever, so I had no idea what it was. But they sent me some samples, which of course it was Red Skull, and I sent it in, and I didn't hear anything for a few weeks, and then I finished filming season 8. I was driving. I gotten to the lift from the airport, and I was on my way home, and I got a call from a manager. She said, "Hey, you got the part." I'm like, "For what? What are we talking about?" She's like, the Hugo Weaving voice match. I'm like, "Oh, cool, right on." And she's like, "You're in Atlanta, right?" And I'm like, "No, I just landed in LA." She's like, "Oh, they need you in Georgia tomorrow. Can you get on the next flight?" And I was like, "Okay." So I literally went right back to the airport, flew out, and then the next morning I was at the soundstage, up the in not far from where we shoot The Walking Dead, and I was shooting, you know, Infinity War and Endgame back to back. It was just insane. It was a really, really amazing experience.
How long would you say you were on like set for that whole production?
So the majority of the time, you're in the motion capture suit, and that takes some time to because it's so tight and everything. It just, getting into that's like a when you go like scuba diving, it's like one of those like wetsuits
Oh yeah,
almost.
yeah, very.
And they they attach the diodes and everything that read out the information, and then the dots on the face because they wanted to have facial capture as well. That takes the most time because they have to make sure it's like mathematically spaced out just right, and then you wear this head camera that sits on your head that goes with your face. No matter where you are, you can't shake it off. So all of your expressions are captured, and you are the camera essentially. You are giving them all the data they need, and then they can plug that into a computer and then do whatever they want with it. So it's fascinating technology they have available these days. So
All right. This is embarrassing the same way I said pecan that to that southern guy that one time. So you never wore prosthetics. It was all CG.
yeah, I feel bad, and I'll be honest. I think that was a partially a factor for why Hugo didn't want to necessarily come back to the part because, from what I understand, it was actually very difficult to put that on. And I mean, it's like 3 hours to put it on, another hour and a half to take it off. I know Dave Bautista, and he always said like the application of all this makeup, it takes so long to do. It looks incredible, and I prefer in most cases the real thing to CGI. But to be honest with you, most people came up to me at tables and whatnot. They said, "How long did it take?" And I said, "Oh, did you really think it was real?" They're like, "Yeah." I'm like, so the CGI has gotten so good
Oh yeah.
that people can't really tell nowadays, unless it's like something like Thanos or the Hulk. You're not really if it seems like a normal person's body or whatever, like people still assume nowadays that it's done with special effects makeup, which is a huge credit to the CGI workers who are putting all these incredible models together, in
Oh,
their
until literally
of course, yeah.
until 7:06 Eastern time, I was convinced that was all done with prosthetics and stuff.
Oh, right
Like
on, yeah.
I literally just learned this as you told me. So
Oh, cool,
um,
yeah.
yeah, I like being a rube on my own show. So with that said, obviously Endgame, Infinity War, huge successes. I'm pretty sure everybody that's alive has seen those movies at this point.
Hope
And then
so.
jump ahead a couple of years, and Disney goes, "Hey, can you come back and do that again?" Or how does What If happen?
Yeah, they so I auditioned for it again, and they said, "Can you do?" I should, of course, happy to. And then I recorded that. I want to say almost 2 years ago. Because I mean, as you've seen with What If, like the animation in that is so incredibly well done, and it took forever to animate that because it was almost like watching live action. It was so well done.
Oh yeah,
Um,
it's crazy fluid. It's
yeah,
beautiful.
I mean, it's just the way that was scoped out and everything is just incredible. But towards the end of production, um, they reached out again, and this was like well into the pandemic, so no one was leaving their home or anything. And luckily, I picked up a sound booth right at the beginning of it, and they said, "Hey, do you do a James Spader voice match?" And I was like, "Oh no, I've literally never tried to do James Spader." And then I did it, and they were like, "Great, you're our Ultron." I was like, "Oh, cool, awesome." And then watching that as you were talking about earlier, like I really wish that iteration of Ultron was in the live action movies, because the moment, and I hope this isn't too much of a spoiler, but you, I'll just say this: when Ultron and Thanos, square off with each other, it's such a beautiful like oh wow, I mean, if he can
Oh,
do
yeah.
that, imagine what else this guy could do, you know. So I was really happy to see that version of the ultimate thinking machine explored on What If, you know.
No, absolutely. I was for what if for me, I was super stoked. Awatu, the Watcher, one of my all-time favorite characters. So
Yeah.
seeing him show up, and then again, spoiler alert, guys, cover your ears if you're not caught up on What If. Watching Ultron just embarrass him for half a season, that was pretty cool stuff, and I think introduced casual fans to these like weirder, deeper concepts that have been going on in Marvel forever, right?
Yeah. And the Watcher was one of my favorites as a kid too, and just
It is.
hearing Jeffrey Wright bring him to life, I was like, oh my god. I mean, first of all, I think Jeffrey Wright's one of the best actors, period. But just the gravitas and like the tone that he brought to that character made him. You're like, oh yeah, that's a being that's been alive for thousands and thousands of years for sure.
Oh yeah.
I totally buy that. You know, he was amazing. You know, he always is though.
No, we are actually, so one of the cool things about working in a comic shop is, a lot of times people want to have these conversations, right? And so this was a conversation I had recently, and I was talking about how Watcher was one of my favorite characters, but hearing the way Jeffrey Wright did the voice versus how I pictured it since I was a kid, it was two totally different things. In my head, the Watcher always had this like booming, like ethereal, godlike voice. And then I heard Jeffrey Wright and I was like, no, that's what he actually sounds like. I've
Yeah,
been
yeah,
wrong my entire he got it.
I know what you mean, because I always envisioned him as having a voice kind of like oh god, who's the leader of the Autobots?
Optimus Prime.
Optimus Prime. Thank you. I always envisioned him having a voice like that. Like I really thought he was going to have that Autobots roll out kind of voice, you know. For whatever reason, maybe not so gravelly, but that's kind of how I thought the Watcher would sound. But then you hear Jeffrey do it, and you're like, that's it. That's perfect, you know.
So you recorded What If 2 years ago?
Yeah, I think the last two episodes where I did Ultron, I did that. I want to say maybe a year ago.
Okay.
Wait, what year is it now? 2020.
2022.
No, it was last August. It was last
cool.
August. Yeah. No. 2 Augusts ago, I guess. August 2020. Okay, yeah. So I guess a year and a half ago. Yeah.
Time has no meaning anymore. Let's be
Time
fair.
has
It's
no
just a
meaning.
weird
I don't know. Yeah,
construct.
it's like, ugh, it's so crazy. We started recording Invincible like 2.5 years ago, and I finished recording Invincible, I think, about a year ago too. So,
So anybody that's watched the show before, they know my three favorite things that I love to talk about are the X-Men, huge X-Men guy, the Power Rangers, big Power Rangers fan. But I'm pulling out some of my key comic books. Literally my favorite indie comic book of all time. This is a #1 first print, the real deal.
oh wow,
Yeah, not a huge print run on that book. It is in spectacular condition. It was from my private stock.
nice.
You're Invincible, man. Like I was trying to save that so I could like burn off some of my excitement to talk about this, but sorry. You're the Immortal. Like, how cool is that? Like, that is literally my all-time favorite comics. They had talked about a movie and then a TV show, and it got kicked around, and just as a nerd, you see it happen with your favorite stuff all the time, and then boom, it's coming to Netflix, and whoa, it has this crazy cast, and like it's like, oh yeah, it's like a bunch of people from The Walking Dead, and Sarah Oh and J.K. Simmons, or you're like, how are they doing this? And then it happened, and how good is that show? And you're on it, like you're a big part of it. Like,
thank you.
sorry.
Yeah, it's crazy because like What If and Invincible they both have half of Hollywood in both of those movies.
Yeah.
Like between both of those TV shows, like I'm pretty sure all of Hollywood is represented pretty much. It's insane, and I feel lucky to be playing a guy like Immortal because I play 5 people on the show. I play Immortal, Aquarius, Biplane, Kursk, and then young Rudy. Well, that's kind of a spoiler, but if you haven't seen it, but it's been out for almost a year, you should have seen it. It's amazing. You gotta watch it. But when Rudy reanimates himself in the younger boy's body, I play Rudy as well. So 2 out of 5 of those characters are still alive. The rest are all dead, and they unfortunately can't come back. But Immortal, as long as they keep reattaching him, I think he's all right.
So let me ask you this, and to get prepared for these, like obviously if it's a comic reader, I read a lot of their comics, or if it's like, you know, something that's been in TV or movies, I'll watch their stuff. I've noticed, so with you, I mean, because you are kind of as famous as you are, you've done like Kimmel and a lot of really cool, you know, the late night rounds and things like that. And I noticed you get asked about your impressionism all the time. Like that's a big thing. They're like, Ross Marquand, hey, you're a really cool actor, but hey, do that Christopher Walken for me. So I don't want to do that to you tonight. But I do know that like this is my big question and kind of in regards to that, when you're coming up with these characters' voices, because we just talked about Jeffrey Wright doing Uatu, like, okay, hey, here's this teenage boy who's been trapped in a bubble his whole life. He just escaped after living inside of a robot. What's he sound like? How do you develop that character?
So that was kind of on the fly. Robert Kirkman, he I mean, I remember I was going in that day to record more dialogue for Immortal, because I was doing the death sequence.
Okay.
Where again, spoiler, but you know, his second death rather.
Time out. He's the Immortal. Just everybody calm down.
He dies, it comes back, he's immortal, you know. But Robert was like, before you do that, because I know you're going to blow out your voice screaming and everything, can we try another character? And I said, yeah, what do you have in mind? He's like, well, we want to do a younger version of Jason Mantzoukas, of course, as Rex Explode. And so can you try? He's like, Robert was like, have you ever done a Jason Mantzoukas impression? I'm like, no, I've never tried to. But it was just kind of, I was trying to get the gravel. It's like, hey, you know, like it's a little bit of the gravel and the kind of like vocal fry that he has mixed in with like a prepubescent boy, so that he would be more appealing to Monster Girl, you know, because that was the whole premise of why he wanted to recreate himself in a younger boy as opposed to a grown man or whatever. Yeah, that was an interesting, like, on the fly kind of thing. Same thing happened with Aquarius too, because like I was just just coming in to do Immortal, and then Robert was like, hey, I got another character for you, can you try this guy? And I was like, sure, what's his deal? He's like, well, I know you do Jeff Bridges, and I really like your Jeff Bridges. Like, what about an underwater Jeff Bridges? And I was like, oh shit, okay. So like, it was like, yeah, man, you know. And then you put him underwater, you know, and all of a sudden he finally some action, you know. And I was like, oh, that's the voice, yeah.
There it is, yeah.
Yep.
So okay, so I do want to rewind, because now we're kind of on this subject. Ultron, they go, hey, can you do a James Spader? And you're like, no. So how do we get to our version of Ultron that we get in What If?
Yeah, so that was kind of interesting, because I know a lot of people were like, he didn't sound as much like Ultron as we wanted, and that's honestly on purpose, because the director and the producers were saying we want it to sound a little bit off, because it's a combination of Vision and Ultron, and Tony, of course. So it's like this weird hybrid. And initially I was trying one where it was like almost with a British inflection to get a bit of Paul Bettany's in there. And then they were like, it seems like a guy who's lived in two different countries his whole life, and it just seems a little off. And they're like, we like it, but it might confuse the audience. So they said, like, to keep the fidelity of the first, you know, performance that James Spader did with Age of Ultron, let's marry that with, and I can't remember who had the idea. I want to say our director had the idea to combine it with one of my favorite thinkers of all time, Carl Sagan. And anybody who knows Carl Sagan knows that this guy had the most incredible, like, way of speaking about the universe. And he was a really, you know, he was just like this physicist who just loved space and time and matter. And he had, you know, kind of had that performance and that delivery with his voice. And I was like, oh, okay. So I combined Carl Sagan with Ultron, and that's where, or with James Spader, I should say, and that's where the What If version of Ultron came from.
I can't believe I'm having a conversation with you about how you developed your Ultron and your Immortal and your Rudy voices. Is incredible. Just anybody's watching this, I'm hard fanboying, guys.
Right on.
So
it's fun.
I kind of rewind, because you've interacted with like most of my favorite TV shows as well. So for example, I'm a huge Mad Men fan. I never went through that like weird like peer pressure to smoke thing until I watched that show, and then all of a sudden I was just like, oh, I should get a pack of Marlboros because that show.
Yeah. I mean,
so,
How amazing is it that a TV show made smoking cool again? Like, wow,
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
terrible.
I mean, but how dreamy is John Hamm? He could do like real drugs, and I'd be like, yeah, he makes it look fine.
Meth sounds good. Yeah.
John Hamm did it. So my question in regards to that was, how are your lungs? Have they recovered from being on the set of that show?
Oh, that's really funny. You mentioned that because I almost lost the job because of my stupidity, because of cigarettes. Because when I got the audition, um, they sent a voice match of that era because they wanted a very specific Paul Newman. It was like the late 60s. I want to say it was 67, 68. And it was right around the time of Martin Luther King's passing. So I think that was maybe 68. So this particular Paul Newman was a lot more raspy. He was definitely smoking cigarettes on the regular, like everyone else in the country.
Right, of course.
I was doing my Paul Newman, which I'd done before I got the audition, but I realized that this version of Paul Newman was a heavy smoker. So that night when I got the audition, I smoked the night before the audition. I got a big old pack of American Spirits, and I was just like smoking like crazy. I mean, I smoked half a pack, and I kept recording myself, playing it back, playing the reference that they played. Now because kind of listening to them back and forth, and I was like, okay, I think I got it now. And the next morning, I woke up, brushed my teeth, took a shower, got ready, was doing my breathing exercise. Like, there's a huge audition, like the biggest audition I've ever had. And I get there, I hadn't spoken to anyone, I was just doing my warm ups. I was breathing. I was just like, kind of chilling out, meditating. And I got to the front desk and I opened my mouth for the first time that day. And the receptionist was like, hi, what's your name? I'm like, Ross Marquand. And she's like, what? I'm like, my name is Ross. I'm sorry. I can't. I'm so sorry. I can't. And she's a water. And I realized that I had screwed up my voice so bad because of smoking that
Oh
even
no.
though I had lines memorized and everything, I sounded not only nothing like Paul Newman, but I sounded like a Muppet or something. I sounded ridiculous. And I walk in there, and of course it's Matthew Weiner and the entire, producing all the people that you would want to impress at Mad Men.
Right.
Literally all 9 of these people are right in front of me. I'm like, oh my God, I'm an idiot. And I did the whole thing, and they were like, thank you so much. Okay, thank you. And I was just like, well, I ruined the biggest opportunity of my life. And somehow a few days later, I got the call that I booked it, which I was like, that doesn't make any sense. And I got to set like a week later, and the director came and said, he came up to me halfway through filming after the pressure had kind of lessened and all the stress of being on that show kind of subsided. He came up to me at lunch and he said, hey, listen, just so you know, you got the job because of me. And I was like, what do you mean? He's like, I saw your impression videos on YouTube, and I vouched for you because I knew that you could do it, but like you really kind of bombed that audition. And I was like, oh shit. Like it was very funny because I knew I messed up, but he luckily had seen my stuff and was so sweet to vouch for me. So that's the reason why I got that job. So anyway, moral of that story is sometimes doing YouTube videos, even if you think that no one is seeing them or they're not making a difference, you never know, because sometimes people see that stuff and they're like, oh, I don't even know you from this thing, but I've seen your impressions or whatever. I've seen your YouTube video on cooking or whatever. And that's why you got this opportunity. So I always tell young YouTubers or young actors, I'm like, please put that stuff out there because you never know who's watching it,
That's awesome. That is such a way cooler story than I thought I was going to get out of that.
Oh, cool. Right?
Yeah, that was awesome.
Cool.
Well, it kind of leads me into my next thing because Mad Men, one of my top 2 shows, my favorite show of all times is The Sopranos, and you've been James Gandolfini, right?
I have. Well, I mean, in YouTube videos, but yeah.
Yeah, for on Conan, right?
Yeah. And, oh yeah, I forgot about it on Conan too. Yeah, I did that. What was it, like the books on tape or something? Or
yeah, it's like it's literally like art books on tape. So like the visual Kama Sutra, but it's James Gandolfini describing what he's seeing.
What are you doing here? Looks like a guy's bent over backwards. What is this? Come on, I'll break your legs.
Yeah, that was like 8 years ago, I want to say. Damn. Maybe 9.
It still works. It's a good
It
bit.
still works? Good.
Yeah, we
good.
watched it this morning and we're dying.
Oh, nice. Okay, cool.
So, listen, I don't want to take up too much of your time. This has been absolutely awesome. I do have one favor before you go. We have a mutual friend in Moshi. He works for our marketing events team here at Coliseum Comics. I think you guys have worked together with like Walker Stalker back in the day, things like that. Do you think you could do an impression of Moshi? Because this is like a thing at work. We all do a Moshi impression, but you're the pro.
You put me on the spot. Oh man,
I
I don't know. I might have to think about that. I might have to do some work on that before I do.
We're all going to be together on Saturday and hang out with him for a little bit. And if we get a good one, we'll just have to like post it to socials after.
I like it. Yeah.
Ross, you are awesome. Thank you so much for agreeing to do this. I look forward to meeting you this Saturday and Sunday. Guys, if you're watching this right now and I didn't ask the cool question that you've been waiting to ask him since you saw What If or Avengers or Mad Men or Invincible or Walking In or any of the 1,000,001 cool things this man has done, guys, this weekend at Coliseum Kissimmee, you get a chance to come ask him yourself. Or if your Kissimmee's a little bit too far from you, head a little bit further south, or I guess technically east or west, that's west, and hit him up in the new Tampa store. I'm sure he would love to answer your questions.
Absolutely.
Ross, thank you so much, man, and have a great night. Can't wait to see you this weekend.
Dude, thank you very much. Thanks for having me. I love that poster, by the way.
Oh, thanks.
Yeah.